Lucky you.
36 best
Tuned
holes in
into
golf.
Alternate Shots podcast,
Barney's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Sandy.
poker,
James Bond.
horse racing,
Double.
classic movies.
Zenyatta.
We have no script.
Down the stretch they come.
We are glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Welcome to Ken Venturi Part 2. Take a listen as Matt Venturi, Wingfoot member and son to Ken, talks about his dad's Hall of Fame life, his great and long-lasting friendships, and a broadcast career that spanned 35 years. All right, so Matt, one of the things that Billy and I were interested in is your dad's relationship with Harvey Ward. It seemed like they were pretty good pals, yet also arch enemies on the links.
Well, they first competed, I think in this America's Cup is what it was. They first got to know each other, and they were thick as thieves, man, because they both loved kind of playing and having a good time. And Harvey, was just a guy's guy that everybody loved hanging with anyway. So, but when Harvey moved out to California and left North Carolina to work for Eddie Lowry at Van Motors, and they were both selling cars for Eddie. That's when they really became good friends, because they would play a lot of golf together, and they competed in the San Francisco City. And so that's when they really started palling around. And then when Harvey got married to Suzanne, she was very close to my mom, Connie. And so they palled around a lot. So it was a great relationship. And again, it was really due to Eddie Lowry, who got Harvey out to California and put him up at San Francisco Golf Club, my dad at California Golf Club. And then they just, they played a lot of golf together.
Got to tell Billy this story about Bing Crosby and Harvey. Was it in Paris, in France?
Oh, Bing and Harvey were in Paris, and they were out carousing one night, and got a little tipsy, and ended up, there was some gal that stuck her head out the window, and Bing started serenading her, and one of the residents had
a Wi-Fi.
Ended up throwing it down on Bing, and they had a convertible car they were sitting in, and he got just totally hit with it. And he looks at Harvey and he goes, "There's always a critic." Kendall told that story.
Yeah.
Well, it travels well. Where at some point your dad got some sort of break to get into show business. How did that happen?
Well, KFRC, that was the local San Francisco radio station, and they covered a lot of sports and everything. And I think this was the time that my dad was down at the Crosby, and they wanted to do an interview with Bing and him. And so Bing said to my dad, he says, "Okay, Ken," he says, "tell me, how are you going to interview me?" And he says, "Well," he says, "Mr. Crosby, I'm going to say this is Ken Venturi here, and I'm here with Mr. Crosby at the Bing Crosby." He goes, No, Ken." He says, "You don't do it like that." He says, "You have to say, 'Hi, this is Ken Venturi, and I'm down here, Pebble Beach, with Bing Crosby.'" And he said, "Okay." And that was the beginning of, okay, how do you present and what do you do, in the face of both radio and television. So I think that was a turning point for him when he loved to tell that story. But it's true. And I think this was the night that it happened.
I was telling Bobby earlier that there's a similarity between your dad and Ralph Kiner, who was also a superstar who had to quit because of his sciatica, and he became a great commentator for his sport.
Sure did. Anyway, yeah. So, and that, again, back to that point, Bill, I mean, all these guys, the athletes, they just ran together. That's how they hung. That's how they played. Great sportsmen, great, good buddies.
And they turned up at the same places. Bing Crosby would turn up at Wingfoot. Your dad came in second in 56 to Jackie Burke. Jackie Burke, Wingfoot, right? Jack Whitaker, you just brought up, Wingfoot.
Yeah.
It all comes back to Wingfoot, which we think is the greatest 36 holes in golf. That's, I don't know.
And you're a member there as well. What was your father's connection to Wingfoot? What kind of, connection did he have there?
Well, it was one of his favorite courses of all time, and I think just the allure too. So when we would come out when I was a kid and stay in Westchester during the Westchester Classic and spend a little time at Wingfoot, I really never had the benefit of really appreciating as much until I moved to New York in '79, and Fran Santangelo unofficially put me up because in those days in Italian, putting up Italian didn't quite work. So Ed Schneider and Wally Ulrich were my sponsors.
Right.
And,
Ghostwriters.
and the first time my dad ever saw Wally on the course, he was playing with Fran, and Fran said, "Hey, I got this guy, man. He can drive the 11th hole on the East course." And my dad said, "No way." And he says, "So they make the turn, they go out. Sure enough, Wally pulls out a persimmon wood and drives it to the green." And my dad said, "You can't do that again." He said, "Yes, I can." And hits another ball, puts it on the green. And he said, "Boy, this guy's something." And I said, when I heard the story later, I said, "Dad, you always told me never bet against the man who says he could do something, because sure as hell he can."
Well, the greatest thing about having Ed Schneider and Wally Ulrich, Ed Schneider was the president for 2 U.S. Opens. And so he was a great organizer, and nobody really challenged him because he was right, like all the time. And then if you wanted to go down the line to Wally, in Wally's heyday, not many people were bigger than Wally.
No, the bear. Yeah, Ed Schneider was a sweetheart. Loved him.
You must have gotten in about 5.5 minutes.
I had some good coaching there, but I was very blessed, very lucky.
Your dad had a really pleasing voice, but he also taught us the game for 35 plus years.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right.
He called it as he saw it, which was always refreshing in TV. Johnny Miller kind of caught the same way. But your father's analysis was always, spot on. You take double bogey out of play. You got to take 6 out of play.
Yeah, and Chirkanian always said, don't say the obvious. Let the TV was there for a purpose. It wasn't like radio. And over the years, the anchors with him were Vin Scully, Jack Whitaker, Pat Summerall, Jimmy Nance, obviously. And over the years, he had some good tutelage and great guys that he worked with who taught him as much as, he was able to help someone like Jim Nance. But, they're great relationships, great friendships that evolved over those years.
And you spent time with those guys. I'm sure he started at 7 or 6 in the morning with Pat Summerall and till 3 in the morning, right? And then did it again the next day.
Did he love broadcasting?
Oh, loved it. He loved it. And they did play hard. Chirkanian knew how to live hard. Shot all the feet 59 at the tables at Bevel. And, in fact, Jimmy always told, I remember this going to Akron, Ohio, to Firestone Country Club. And I think the first time that he took Jimmy under his wing, he took him to the Diamond Grill in Akron. And he says, "Okay, let me take care of you, kid." He says, "Well, let's order up." So he says, the waitress, he says, "I'd like a Diet Dr. Pepper." And she goes, "Oh, sir," she goes, "sorry, we don't have Diet Dr. Pepper." And he says, "Well, in that case, I'll have a double Crown Royal." And he looks at him, he goes, "Stay with me, kid."
That certainly saw a replay of the 1986 Masters with Jack Nicklaus. And I was watching, my mother's favorite golfer was Jack Nicklaus because my mother was from Akron, Ohio, and Nicklaus was Ohio. So I was watching it, and it was almost jolting to hear your dad's voice again. It was like, it brought back so much. I wasn't watching it to hear your father, but then I ended up listening to your father. Just a great iconic voice with that for that Masters.
Well, thank you. It's funny, Bill, because when I was going back and thinking about Winged Foot, and I think one of the greatest experiences I had was the '97 PGA when Davis won, and that was such an incredible year for me because I had members credentials, CBS credentials. I had a cart, I had the headset, I could hear Chirkanian. I was up in the tower when he made that last putt with the rainbow, and I was listening, like you said, to the recap here and heard my dad's voice, and it's like, man, that was really something. That was for the ages. I mean, unbelievable. What an experience that day was.
Oh. Yeah, to have all those great experiences married together is,
What
awesome.
can you tell people about Frank Chirkanian? Not many people know about him. There's a little here or there, but what could you tell people about him?
Well, Frank really was the one that gave my dad the break, and his nickname was the Ayatollah. But he was a strong-willed but funny, really witty guy, super talented, good player. I played one of the last rounds with Frank. He shot 74. I think it was 82. And then he passed away a couple of weeks after that. But he could play. he had an incredible eye. I mean, how much of an artist he was in the truck to be able to, go to where the action was in his. We were at Bel Air, and Al Michaels made some comments. He said, the one thing I really regretted was never going to work with CBS and Frank Chirkanian. And he said, let me tell you something about Frank. In the Masters, it's commercial free, and you got this going. And he said, within 1 hour, Frank got 56 shots in. Now, if you think about the pre-routine that guys go through and where you are and the course and everything, but to get 56 shots in 1 hour, that he had an incredible knack of where to go, where to be, and was the best. He was incredible.
And he must have had a crew that understood, follow orders, don't question, because you get the cameras in the right places for all those things. It's not always easy.
Well, you got to just watch Tin Cup and you get a feel for the Ayatollah. So that's pretty great.
If he had 50 cameras, he had a sense on which one was ready and which golfer was ready to hit, because Nicklaus would pour over a putt forever, and Trevino would be blink and he's gone, right?
And he's sitting in a truck looking at 50 monitors, however many cameras up there.
That's what I say. And actually, if you were in the truck watching that, that's the place to be, because it was just incredible to see. And Lance Barrow, he was a successor producer, executive producer too, and really great. He learned from one of the greatest. So, with those CBS days and the people were just so fun, so great.
Of that one venue, and they know every inch of every acre of every 300, 400 acres of there, whatever it is. But what is their vulnerability, if there is one? They do such a good job, but they only have a 1-year agreement.
Yeah, well, you can over the years with Dick Ryan, such a wonderful, wonderful friend, 50 years plus the Masters, and he was my dad's attorney as well. But the ability to keep that going every year with, like you said, Bob, it's a 1-year contract and that's it. But CBS had to put in, all the underground fixed costs and everything. And this they've been able to perpetuate that. And they're, some of the commentators, aren't there anymore.
They say the wrong thing.
Say the right things, whatever. But
Jack Whitaker. Jack Whitaker was Hall of Fame. Come on.
Gary
you can throw out Jack Whitaker.
Yeah, I think he called the gallery a mob.
What did Gary McCord say that got him out of there?
Oh, a couple things.
Yeah.
But
the expense of being humorous.
Yeah, but that's true. That's the Masters. It's turned into an incredible institution.
One thing I do recall, and I think every big time, even like a Smiley Kaufman or Nota Begay today, they are Sweden. They may have a little rooting interest in this person or that person, but when they're commentating, like your dad would say, "Hold down ball," right? It would go by the putt. He was rooting. It didn't matter who it was. It could be the last place guy, but he wanted him to finish as well as he could. He kind of created that instinct, if you will.
Yeah, he was there. I tell you, one of the greatest experience I had was the 2000 President's Cup. So my dad had just finished really his broadcast career. He knew, so many insights into these players, and he couldn't play anymore himself, obviously. So being the captain of the President's Cup at RTJ and being able to, and Peter Thompson was the international captain, and as he picked the players and as it goes, he had so many great insights into what the talent was, what their, who they could be paired with well, and he just loved it because he was in his element from a strategic standpoint, because he couldn't play, but he could leverage these guys and do it when he was just finishing his career, where he just had a great sense. And to just see him behind the ropes and how he was kind of doing that was so cool, because it all came to a culmination here that I never had experienced before, because I really didn't get a chance to see him play, because I was so much younger. I saw him win the San Francisco City Championship, but that was the only one. In the U.S. Open, I was 7 years old away at a camp. So, seeing him in action and seeing that President's Cup that year was really a great experience. The USS Cole got bombed, and all the players wore black ribbons, and it was just, the camaraderie was great. It was, what an experience.
It was a year before 9/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it comes with a sacrifice, and you grew, like you said, you were doing things families do. and your dad was either earning a living on a golf course or earning a living on a golf course behind a microphone. It's a lot. What's it like growing up
Yeah, I wouldn't trade any of it. He wasn't around a lot. When we moved to Palm Springs is when I spent more time with him because my folks got divorced. I lived with my dad that sophomore, junior, senior year. And that's when I started playing golf. I never really played golf until then because he traveled and didn't have time. In fact, when we moved to Palm Springs, our house wasn't ready. So we moved in with Mr. Sinatra for 2 weeks, lived with them. And they became and were very good friends. So that was a kind of a fun period down there. And so I got a little bit more of a chance to kind of hands-on with him with the golf. But then, over the years, you just stay close to it. I was fortunate to become good friends with Jesse Ortiz, with Olimar, and then co-founded Bobby Jones Golf Company, and Dick Ryan was involved with that. But you keep your hand in it, and golf's been really wonderful. I mean, being able to join Wingfoot and have that continue to be, just a great thing to have and be able to reflect on and be able to come back because I'm living on the West Coast here. But just so fortunate to have golf in my life, and my dad, is credited with that. So wouldn't trade anything. Just
living in Palm Springs is not a bad deal either.
Well, in those days there wasn't much going on. So now everything's kind of pushed out toward Palm Desert and
right.
Indian Wells. But it was an interesting period. And when he was there he took the job at Mission Hills as director of golf, and then started his career broadcasting, was traveling a lot. He ended up moving back to Florida. And you talk about Gene Saracen. Gene Saracen and he were the two pros at Marco Island and Marco Island Shores. But, he was just looking for a place where during the winter he could hang, and then during the summer he'd be traveling doing the broadcast. So, but Palm Springs, my brother lives down there in Indian Wells now. He's been in the golf cart business and now has his company, Back Nine Greens, and it's fun going back. The desert's therapeutic. It really is great. Well, Lift Tour is very interesting. I think limited number of players. You're either on the roster or you're not. They obviously paid a lot of money, and my understanding was, the Saudis were really looking to take over the European Tour. They didn't have that opportunity, and so they created this. And I think it's been a wake up call for the tour. There's no question about it. But I give them credit for stepping up, and I really give credit to Tiger and to Rory and the guys who have really been leaders in terms of taking a position. And honestly, some guys who have decided to take the money and go, God bless them. I think it's been a terrible thing for golf. And I think my dad's probably rolling over his grave over the whole thing. But guys pick their spots, and they're going to have to live with it. But I'm not sure how long the Live Tour is really going to continue to go. And a rumor has it that MBS, when he figures it out, he's going to shut it down. I mean, look what happened to Credit Suisse debacle and everything else. So I'm not sure how long it's got, but we'll see. They can't get much of a viewership going, that's for sure.
As I keep saying, and I don't know if you agree or not, but it's like if you win on the Live Tour, who really cares?
Yeah.
I mean, what if you actually won?
And it's actually
the money's great, fine. If you need the money, take the money. I don't justify condemning people for taking what they need to live or what they think they need to live. But in my opinion, it's not anything to do with golf or prestigious golf or tradition or anything like it. It's just cash.
Well, especially, I mean, you think about it now too, Billy. I mean, this young talent is coming up through college playing. And I mean, we've got these 7 kids or these Venturi members at Cal Club. They're just fantastic kids. And Isaiah Salinda is one of them. And these guys are aspiring to become pro and good pros. And, that's what the competition is. It's not playing on the Live. I mean, so I think
right.
they're designed to become obsolete at some point here. And I just, if it can't be simpatico, they should have all gotten in a room together and figured out how to coexist and make it work. And they couldn't do it. It should have been a consensual kind of agreement on making it work. And I think the egos were too big, and there was just too much history there, and it was too fractious, and they just couldn't couldn't do it, and that's just too bad. I think it's bad for golf, but I think it's going to eventually, the Live Tour is going to have a tough time.
Well, and every cloud has a silver lining, like you said. The PGA Tour has stepped up, and it's become more financially beneficial to the players. But it's also, it's like a farm system. You can aspire in college to make the PGA Tour. You can't aspire to make the Live. You have to be asked.
That's right.
There's no earning your way onto the Live Tour.
Yeah,
that's right. So a little lighter. What's your favorite hole at Winged Foot? You got 36. You can choose the putting green too. That's another hole. There's 2 putting greens. Billy and I might choose the putting green any given day. But what's your favorite hole to play at Winged Foot?
There's so many great holes. I always like 4 West because I just thought it set up with my eye. I don't know. 4 at Bel Air used to have a similar look, and then both those holes have been redone a little bit. But I love that hole. I think 9 West is, God, it's just so majestic. And I think 15 is a great hole. Freddie Cochran's old home hole, where I guess Ken lives now. Listen to your podcast, which was great.
Yeah.
And then the East Course, I love. I think number 13, the par 3 is fantastic, and 18's almost as good as 9 on the West. But and I think I enjoy playing the East a great deal. I think it's very underrated, and it's just, my dad always said, don't hide flags. It's just, you got to be able to bump and run. And the East always kind of, I thought, flowed to my eye a little different from the West, and the West is just a big drink of water. So they're just, holy smokes. The greatest 36 hole in golf, bar none. Gosh, what could ever come to match it?
What do you think is the hardest green to putt or to read?
Well, I haven't been out there for a little while, but 10 West is not too easy for me. But I tell you, I think since Gil came, there's a little more false fronts than I was used to, even like a 1 and some of the really severe ones if you're above the hole. So 1's always a big wake up call when you get started. So it's fun taking a guess out there and having to be above the hole.
If you look at it, there's very few holes without, like 6, you wouldn't say West is a false front, but 1 through 5 false front, 8, 7, 8, 9, maybe not. 10, gosh, that's a bad false front if you come down a foot off that green. So here's another one. Your dad and you, hypothetically, you're in New York and you're in the 21 club, and hypothetically the 21 club is still open. And there's 2 guys in there. One guy's on the right, and one guy's on the left. On the right is Frank Sinatra in his prime. On the left is James Bond 007 on the left, is in 21 over there on the right. And James Bond, Sean Connery in his prime, is on the left. Where are you guys heading first?
Well, I've never met Sean Connery. I know he's a great golfer, and he's funny stories about him. But Mr. S, we used to call him. He and my dad were very close. In fact, after my dad won the U.S. Open, he had an appointment at Twitch Shores restaurant, and the president of the United States, Lyndon B. Johnson, called up and said they called up on his behalf and asked him to come to the White House. And he said, "I'm sorry, but please tell the president I'm terribly sorry, but I have a commitment tonight at Twitch Shores." And so he went to Twitch Shores that night, and Mr. Sinatra was there, and Joey Lewis was there too, who would open up for him. And he sees Joey Lewis, and Joey Lewis says, "My dad," he goes, "Hey, Kenny," he says, "I got to tell you," he says, I saw you stumble, and I saw you almost near collapse, and the exhaustion of the finishing and the 18th hole. He says, "I got to tell you, it was the greatest act I ever saw." But 21 was great. Twitch Shores was great. Gallagher's was great. PJ Clark's. I remember going in with my dad to those guys, those places. A lot of fun memories. New York was always the greatest because the people here, the families, the Santangelo family, wonderful, wonderful family. Just a second family to me. The Drattys were always great to us. And just hanging. I remember when I come out as a little kid, I go up in the locker room and shine shoes at Westchester with Tony up there, I mean, it was just a great hang. So many great memories. And then being able to come back working on the street and joining Wingfoot was just, I mean, you know, you couldn't ask for anything more wonderful.
When are you coming out next?
Centennial. I'm gonna actually, I'll tell you what I'm doing. My girlfriend's father's turning 96 today. He was an Irish immigrant. He came over at 18. He fought in the war, became a U.S. citizen. He's 95. He works 5 days a week at Home Depot still. We're taking him to Ireland to go see his 103-year-old brother. Wow. And Bally James died, and then we're flying back, and we're going to be here for the centennial. So I can't wait.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. There's some genes in that family.
Yeah, she's going to be around a long time, this girl.
You better start working out. I know you're in good shape, but you better double it up. What's your favorite movie? Not Caddyshack. What's your favorite movie of all, or 2 or 3 favorite movies? Billy and I are movie fans.
Yeah, but no one can have just one favorite movie.
Well, let's see. I think The Godfather 2 was probably my favorite because, I mean, Shawshank Redemption, so these are great movies. But the reason why I like Godfather is because it was filmed at the Kaiser Estate. And when my dad was a kid, my grandparents would take him up to Tahoe, and he told a story about how he was out on the Kaiser Estate dock. Henry Kaiser was out there, and the grandson fell in the water. It was really super cold. My dad jumped in, and got the kid, pulled the kid out. And Mr. Kaiser says, "Oh, he says, oh, thank you so much." He says, "I'll tell you what." He says, "You can drive my boats anytime." And it had a whole fleet of crisscross. There's these pictures of my dad driving the crisscross and stuff. So we used to go up there, and that was always so fun. So I think when I saw The Godfather, I saw it filmed at the Kaiser Estate, and the whole theme of the movie, I thought, "Oh, this is so great!" You know, it's like a throwback. But
just don't say a Hail Mary while you're on the boat.
That's right.
What kind of relationship did your dad have with caddies? Did he have one all the time, or did it matter to him?
Yeah, most of those guys didn't travel with you. When my dad was on the tour, my uncle Bruce would drive the car, and Tony Lima would drive shotgun next to him, and then they would pick up the caddies at different
the local places.
Yeah, you know, that's the way it was. And he grew up, you know, caddying, and he told a story about how when he came back to the U.S. Open, he went to Cyprus and bought Kentucky Fried Chicken and Dom Perignon and with the caddies and celebrated with them, you know, because I mean, these guys, there's a commonality, and you always, you know, you never forget where you came from.
Yeah, well, and if you love golf the way we all love it, you learn to appreciate the caddies.
Yeah,
oh,
we've had a John Birdman and Bobby Collins, and we're going to have more. And those guys have the real stories. And so you mentioned Tony Lima. We ought to take a minute or two before our time runs out here. You got to have a Tony Lima story, because there was a colorful, good golfer that unfortunately died young, right?
He died trying to be charitable. Wasn't he going to a charitable exhibition?
Yeah, well, I think they were in Akron or maybe Detroit, and they were in the locker room together, and Tony said they were supposed to go to a next tournament together in an exhibition, and he said, "I'm not going, Ken." And he said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I made another commitment." He said, "No, you have this commitment, Tony. You can't do that." And he said, "No, I got it. I'm going to do this." And you know, I think they were paying him more money and whatever. So my dad said that he heard, I don't know where he was, but he heard someone said a golf professional had just crashed in an airplane, and my dad said he said he knew it was Tony, and knew that was the case. So, but Tony grew up in the Bay Area, and my grandfather gave him his first pair of golf shoes. No, I'm sorry, my grandmother gave Tony his first pair of golf shoes, and my grandfather gave George Archer his first pair of golf shoes at Harding Park. But you know, Tony was Champagne Tony. He was good-looking guy, nice guy, great player, got a lot of talent, and just died way too young.
So one last thought here. You and your dad are going out to play golf, and you can play with 2 people. Who are you filling out your foursome with? If you and your dad got together, here's the 2 guys who want to play the East Course of Wingfoot. This is who we want, nobody else. Who's it going to be?
Oh, God. Well, I'd like to get out there with Franny Santangelo again. He'd be one of my guys, and Bill Fugazi, because those guys were about as colorful as you get, and in classic Wingfoot. And that would be a heck of a foursome.
I think I know why you picked him, because when your dad played at Wingfoot, he played with him like he had played with him last week and the week before last and the week before last. He was very comfortable up there. Many people thought he was a member. He was so comfortable there, but he was out on the road a lot. When he came in, they thought, oh, there's Ken, one of our members. He's just sitting in the grill room telling stories like Franny.
Yeah. Well, they were very, very gracious. The club was very good to him, and he loved it. He loved the members, and he loved it like a home.
Yeah, how he represented it with class on both sides of the camera. You can't say enough about a guy who purports himself that well, that long, and in two incredibly difficult venues to crack. It's kind of an amazing story that he could be that good at golf and then that good at broadcasting golf. Doesn't happen every day.
Oh, thanks, Bill. He was very blessed and very fortunate, and life treated him well.
I don't know how he overcame speaking challenges, but he also had this uncanny thing of remembering names. He remembered names. I don't know how he did that. He must have had a trick, because he had to meet so many people, and then he'd see him a year later and he'd remember names.
Yeah, I don't know how he did that. That was pretty uncanny, because he'd go back 3-4 years and remember the situation. But it was a good talent. It's nice to have. I wish I had it.
The picture of him here with Bing Crosby, and is that a Labrador Retriever?
Yeah, that was Bing's dog.
Well, you can see your dad had a way with dogs too, because the dog is completely comfortable, and so's your father, just petting him there. It's a great picture.
But real quick story. So, he did guiding eyes for blind for many years, 25 plus years. And then Dick Ryan it was very active. Roy Fugazi, very active with it. But there's a great story. It was this man, Omar. He was a blind man, and he was at one of the last dinners that I went to. And he said, "This is Ken Venturi's dog." And he said, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "I was in the tower on the 85th floor. And he said, my dog," he said, "I wasn't going to make it out." And he said, I gave this person my dog to take. And he said his dog came back and grabbed him and got him out of the tower.
Wow. Matt, this is so wonderful that you gave us this time. And by doing that, you gave hundreds or thousands of people to see this. And it's a great peek into a family, a life, and that spans more than 100 years in golf. And it's going to continue going forward. Thanks so much. Have a great time while you're in Rye at Shea Fugazi.
Okay. Yeah, living large. Thanks, guys. Bob, Billy,
We'll see you in May.
Thanks.
I'm
thanks
looking forward
again,
to it,
Matty.
All right. God bless you guys. Thanks so much. The West is just a big drink of water. So they're just, holy smokes. The greatest 36 holes in golf. And Fran said, "Hey, I got this guy, man. He can drive the 11th hole on the East Course." And my dad said, "No way." And he says, so they make the turn to go out. Sure enough, Wally pulls out a persimmon wood and drives it to the green. And my dad said, "You can't do that again." He said, "Yes, I can." And hits another ball, puts it on the green. And he said, "Boy, this guy's something." And I said, when I heard the story later, I said, "Dad, you always told me never bet against the man who says he could do something, because sure as hell he can."
Did he love broadcasting?
Oh, loved it. He loved it. And they did play hard. Chirkanian knew how to live hard. Shot all the feet 59 at the tables at Bevel. And my dad was down at the Crosby, and they wanted to do a interview with Bing and him. And so Bing said to my dad, he says, "Okay, Ken," he says, "tell me, how are you going to interview me?" And he says, "Well," he says, "Mr. Crosby, I'm going to say this is Ken Venturi here, and I'm here with Mr. Crosby at the Bing Crosby." He goes, No, Ken." He says, "You don't do it like that." He says, "You have to say, 'Hi, this is Ken Venturi, and I'm down here, Pebble Beach, with Bing Crosby.'" And he said, "Okay." So I think that was a turning point.
Thanks for joining us today.
Billy Harmon.
We really appreciate your
Double
feedback.
Indemnity.
And please
Arky.
subscribe to the show
Two-Outer.
and hit
Claude
the bell
Harmon.
icon so you get notified
Movie Classics.
new episodes.
Mark Gable.
Hit them
Odd
hard
Job.
and hit them off.
Best 36 holes.